The Secret Service escorts the president's body from Parkland Hospital and loads the casket aboard Air Force One.
I was struck by the heavy-handed manner in which the Secret Service and the presidential aides removed the body from Dallas. Was it simply a panicked reaction to the chaos of the moment, or was it more a deliberate attempt of a cover-up of what happened earlier that day in Dealey Plaza?
Air Force One touches down at Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington at 5:58 p.m. President Kennedy's body is driven to Bethesda Naval Hospital for the autopsy. Chief pathologist James Humes and his team know their efforts here tonight will be critical to any criminal proceeding against the crime's perpetrator. J. Edgar Hoover has sent FBI agents James Siebert and Francis O'Neill to stay with the body through to embalmment. He expects a detailed report on everything that happens in the autopsy room. Typically, a small pathology team are alone, but this is no ordinary autopsy.
Here we have an autopsy where there's at least 30 people inside the suite. Representatives of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the FBI, technicians, pathologists, all working in this massive crush to get the autopsy done, arguing, talking over each other. The head pathologist, Dr. Humes, even stated in evidence that he wished he could have chucked them all out.
Just stay back a little bit, please.
It was like trying to do delicate neurosurgery in a three-ring circus.
30 years after the JFK assassination, the Clinton administration initiates the Assassination Records Review Board to release documents relating to the shooting and conduct interviews about JFK's autopsy. This gives Colin McLaren access to vital information that was classified during Howard Donohue's investigation in the 1970s.
Couldn't be.
In 1995, the ARRB subpoenaed all records to do with the Dallas trip from all agencies involved. They wanted to inspect all the books. Unfortunately, the Secret Service destroyed their documents, all their records, the week earlier. Of course, why would they do that?
Did the Secret Service have something to hide? From the outset, McLaren thinks basic forensic practices were being ignored. Secret Service agents' clothing is spattered with JFK's brain matter.
Their clothing should have been bagged up and treated as exhibits. They were witnesses. They should never have been there if they stayed for the duration.
Dr. Humes examines the president's head, recording a massive wound 130 millimeters in diameter. He concludes it is the result of a bullet that's exploded. X-ray technician Gerald Custer X-rays the president according to Dr. Humes' instructions.
Good. Clear.
When developed, these X-rays clearly show multiple bullet fragments in the skull. Later, Custer's boss, Dr. John Ebersole, approaches him.
He made it perfectly clear I was not to speak of this.
If you could, convey the sense of the words that he gave you as best as you can.
Keep your mouth shut.
Okay, that's perfectly blunt.
Forensic photographers take many photos, especially of JFK's head wound. Young photographer Floyd Reeby testifies to taking around 100 shots on 8 or 9 separate film rolls. They are crucial evidence.
When you finished with one roll of 35mm film, what did you do with that?
Well, I took it out of the camera and gave it to one of the Secret Service agents there.
The FBI records show that 22 color rolls and 18 black and white rolls are taken. Their care is entrusted to the Secret Service agent, Roy Kellerman. Gerald Custer testifies that the autopsy room was a scene of loud debate and that he witnessed the doctors being harassed.
The commotion level was astronomical. The decibel level was extremely high. You had to scream at people at times. There was a 4-star general in there and a civilian who I took to be Kennedy's personal physician.
And were this general and this person in civilian clothing giving directions to Dr. Ebersole?
Correct, absolutely.
What kind of directions were they giving to him?
In a sense, the Kennedy family would not like you to pursue this path any further.
Would you like her to come in right now? Would you like? Wait, just saying. Still be here.
We've got the White House on our backs, Doctor. What are we supposed to do?
All right, you have 5 minutes.
Dr. Humes does complete the autopsy, but having had his work disrupted, he's dissatisfied with the result. The pathology slides created by Dr. Humes are handed to Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman.
If everything in the autopsy suite was on the up and up, you would have had a cause of death sorted out within about 3 or 4 hours. All the exhibits would have been bagged, labelled, and a proper continuity and signatures would have taken place. But unfortunately, none of that happened.
Shortly after the autopsy, Dr. Humes' boss, George Berkeley, informs him that Robert Kennedy wants his brother's brain.
He asked me would I give him the brain, which I promptly handed to him in a pail. Then the mystery really begins, because what happened after that, I don't know. What George Berkeley did with the brain is the mystery of the century. And why I so easily acceded to his wishes, I don't know. Other than he was talking about Bobby and the family and what they want.
Days after the autopsy, Dr. Ebersole returns from a meeting at the White House with the Secret Service. He has a strange request for Gerald Custer.
He gave me 3 or 4 different metal fragments varying in size, and he asked me to tape them to the bones.
And did you tape them to the bones?
Yes, sir.
Custer says he was asked to manufacture an X-ray that would obscure detection of an explosive frangible bullet by placing full metal jacket bullet fragments on JFK's remains.
Well, that was the most traumatic. After I signed the gag order, I was told that if anything, no matter what got out, it would be the sorriest day of my life, and that I'd spend most of my time behind prison walls.
A few days later, the chief photographer and Floyd Reeby are approached by a Secret Service agent.
You mentioned something related to a secrecy oath.
Well, we were told that this was classified information under the National Security Act, and we had to read it and sign it. And if we talked about it to anybody at all, well, we'd be court-martialed.
Virtually everybody in that autopsy suite that day was forced to sign a gag order.
Is the Secret Service trying to cover up a complex conspiracy to kill the President of the United States? Ballistic expert Howard Donahue has a simple answer. As McLaren scours the Warren Commission report, he discovers that some vital witnesses from the autopsy were never called, and that, in his view, pivotal evidence was disregarded. Most crucially, the autopsy notes of FBI agents James Siebert and Francis O'Neill. McLaren discovers that Assistant Counsel Arlen Specter meets with the 2 agents and asks them if they'd made any notes in the autopsy suite. The agents said that they did. They also told him that senior Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman took possession of all photographs and X-rays. He promised they would be made available to the FBI. Almost all of these X-rays and photographs are never seen again.
Did you see any FBI or Secret Service agents taking notes?
Oh, that's right. Siebert and O'Neill. I could swear they were writing a book that night, writing it down.
But Assistant Counsel Arlen Specter tells a different story.
In a memo written by Specter, he stated there was no notes made by Siebert and O'Neill. Was this a misunderstanding by Specter, or was it in fact a lie? Either way, Siebert and O'Neill weren't called to the Warren Commission or their notes. Why?
2 months into the Warren Commission hearings, X-ray technician Gerald Custer has a preliminary interview with Counsellor Specter outside the courtroom.
There's little doubt that Custer's observations in the autopsy and his story of falsifying an X-ray for the Secret Service would have been explosive evidence at the Warren Commission.
Custer tells Specter his story and waits to be summoned. Specter never calls him. Senator Ralph Yarborough is also keen to testify at the Warren Commission. He was in the car behind Secret Service agent George Hickey.
One Secret Service man sitting down in the car ahead of us pulled out an automatic weapon or rifle, and he looked backward. I smelled gunpowder. It clung to the car nearly all the way to the hospital.
Chief Justice Warren demanded that Yarborough be called to testify. He never did.
Why Warren's order was not obeyed is a mystery. Although he was the head of the inquiry, McLaren believes he was not always in control. For whatever reason, the Commission did not interview key eyewitnesses.
It's not known whether Arlen Spector spoke to any of the agents from the follow-up car. Only one of those agents in the car gave evidence to the Warren Commission. Depending on your point of view, that is either very neglectful or very telling. I came to believe that the Warren Commission themselves weren't interested in finding the truth.
For Howard Donahue and Colin McLaren, the overwhelming evidence of their investigation reveals what they think is the truth behind the assassination of JFK. Three shots are fired. The first is by Lee Harvey Oswald. It misses, but a ricocheting fragment of the bullet hits the president, causing him to say, "My God, I'm hit." At the sound of gunfire, Agent George Hickey turns to look up at the 6th floor window. Oswald fires again. The second bullet enters the president's back and exits his neck, hurtling forward into Governor Connolly's back and exiting through his chest. Hickey picks up the AR-15 to return fire, flicks off the safety, and as the follow-up car lunges forward, he pulls the trigger. The presidential car is rushed to Parkland Hospital, where, McLaren believes, a massive cover-up begins. Both Donahue and McLaren find that 11 people are able to put the assault rifle in George Hickey's hands at or before the time of the third shot. 7 of the 11 are Hickey's fellow Secret Service agents. McLaren and Donahue also identified 10 people who testified that they smelled gunpowder at street level at or around the time of the shooting.
You don't smell gunpowder unless it blows in your face.
The autopsy in Bethesda, Maryland is also suspicious to McLaren. The Secret Service's interference, the falsified X-rays, the lost photographs, and the missing brain of the president all suggest a conspiracy.
We talked about it to anybody at all, well, we'd be court-martialed.
Finally, there is the Warren Commission itself, with its unsummoned witnesses, unheard testimony, unanswered questions, and unpresented evidence. Colin McLaren believes the Warren Commission had their shooter conveniently dead. They had their murder weapon. They had a plausible forensic account of a 3-bullet assassination. Case closed. McLaren believes that the US government was covering up Secret Service agent George Hickey's fatal shot. But why did Hickey shoot the President of the United States? Both Donahue and McLaren agree the third shot that hit Kennedy was the result of a tragic accident.
Agent Hickey reached down on the seat beside him, grabbed the AR-15, bring it to his shoulder. He flipped off the safety, and at that time he fell over backwards and the gun went off, striking President Kennedy in the back of the head.
What Howard proved, in my view, was that Oswald didn't fire that shot, and most likely it was fired by Agent George Hickey from the follow-up car accidentally. In the panic of the moment, you know, in the chaos of combat, he's trying to respond, he's trying to do his job. He's probably already acquired Oswald visually, gonna return fire, and fate intervenes.
George Hickey never takes the stand to be cross-examined about his statement. He never speaks publicly about the assassination. He dies in 2005.
Understanding the real cause of the death of JFK isn't about blackening the name of any individual or organisation. It's about the truth and supplying a definitive answer to the American people. An answer no more complex than a tragic accident colliding with a foolhardy assassination attempt. Maybe it's time to quietly close the door behind history's most talked about and debated crime scene.
After the break, there's more heartache for America's most famous family. Brand new JFK Jr., The Flight That Killed a Kennedy, is next.